Good evening, parents, and welcome to 7th grade math. My name is Mr. Honig. I have half of the students here, and we're going to be walking you through what you guys can expect to see from your 7th grade math classes this year. Mrs. Mills is going to walk you guys through what the process is, how the children are going to be getting their work at home, and what you guys can expect to see from home. So I'm just giving you a brief overview. So we have two different sections here. We have a section 1, which is essentially 7th grade math. Okay, sometimes referred to as Algebra 1A, or I refer to it as 7th grade math. Okay, so here's our scope and sequence for 7th grade math. They're currently working on properties of rational numbers. That's just add, subtract, multiply, divide, any type of number that they see. We're then going to move on to the algebraic piece, where we're going to go into expressions. That's taking anything, writing, evaluating expressions, combining like terms, distributive properties, some things that some of you may remember from your earlier work with math when you were in 7th grade. We'll move on to equations. That's solving 1, 2, and possibly multi-step equations all the way up to 3, 4, 5. Variables on both sides, making sure that they can solve those equations. We're going to graph inequalities as well. Touch on ratios and proportions. So kind of this is where we get into the real-world applications of ratios and proportions, making sure that they can convert between different units and so on and so forth. Okay. Geometry, we do touch on a little bit of geometry, where we start with parallel lines that are intersected by a transversal. We have triangles, properties of triangles, scale drawings and models. And then we split the geometry unit in two sections. That would also be circles and solids as well. Okay. And we finish off with statistics, probability, and data. That's where the kids are going through working on sampling, understanding what a random sample is, how to find central tendency, mean, median, mode, and range, looking at variability, which is consistency in data. This is all part of where they are in Unit 8. Unit 9 is dependent on what we have with state testing this year, so we'll see what PSSA actually will do. And then we finish up with slope, so graphing lines in slope-intercept form. That's at y equals mx plus b. Okay. There is a second section, and this is only for my students who are in periods 2, 4, and 7. That is the Algebra 1 curriculum. This is an accelerated course. And much of what we do in the Algebra 1 curriculum is the exact same as what we do in the 7th grade math curriculum. It's just the Algebra 1 curriculum is a little bit faster. So if you see the same thing, we have operations with numbers. This is the same as the first unit for the 7th grade math. And then we go into a little bit of basic operations of rules, properties of algebra, similar to our expressions unit with 7th grade math, but a little bit more intense. Solving basic equations, difficult equations, and then writing equations are the next 3 units, chapters, and we split that up into 3 different sections. We then jump into writing linear equations. That's graphing with slope-intercept form. Touch on constant and proportionality. This is a piece that's also in the 7th grade math curriculum, which if they can do everything in chapters 4A and 4B, constant and proportionality is actually very, very simple. We touch on geometry, get into compound inequalities, a little bit of an extension off the geometry of what they have in 7th grade math. Same thing with inequalities. We jump just a step further. Instead of just solving inequalities, graphing inequalities, we actually graph them on a coordinate plane. We have our probability of statistics unit, which again is almost identical to the 7th grade math unit. And then we touch on exponent rules. So now we're getting into the heavy algebra piece. Exponents, quadratic equations, touching on the quadratic formula, possibly even in there, working with rational expressions as well. Okay, so that's our scope and sequence. This is found on my webpage. So my webpage, you can go through homework hotline. So you just go to Southern, you go to homework hotline, click the 7th grade homework, and then my page is all the way down here, which says Algebra 1A. Okay, and you just have to click in here. And then Mrs. Mills is new this year, and she's using homework hotline in this fashion. For me, when you click on the click here button, it actually takes you to my webpage, which for my students, this is where they find all their homework. So this is where homework will be posted. Same thing with Mrs. Mills. She's going to have her homework posted up here. So as I see here, she has a quiz tomorrow and a part 1 test due on Friday. Okay, that's a piece of how we are going to make sure we communicate with students. We also use Google Classroom. Okay, so in Google Classroom, that's how we are sending out all of our work to students. Okay, and you see here are the Unit 1 documents, and then Mrs. Mills is going to go through what this is actually going to look like. Okay, further, touching on the syllabus. So if I touch base on what our syllabus is, this is in my important information. This is going to look a little bit differently from each class. If we start with, I'm going to start with our 7th grade math students, the grading policy, which is probably the most important. the grading policy, this is the same as all their other 7th grade courses, 60% for tests, 30% for the other category. And Mrs. Mills is going to touch on a small project is the organizational piece where they are keeping up with their virtual notebook. The nice thing is we don't have this right now. Study Island is no more this year. So parents, you can shout a collective yay, okay? And then homework, this is worth 10%, okay? Where this differs in only my classes, periods 2, 4, and 7, we actually don't have a homework category. So it's actually worth 0%. So the way I'm going to grade homework is that is through their digital notebook. So I will be giving them, again, another organizational grade, which if they're following along with what we're doing in class, they're keeping their notes and they're staying organized. They're going to get credit for their homework in that digital notebook piece. Again, Study Island is not a part of this, okay? So that's the overall work of what you're going to see this year. The last thing I do want to go over with you is how we are working with your students this year. So what we have is we are working every single day, whether they are in person or at home. So the students, what they are doing is they're jumping into their Google Meet. So I'll just show you what that looks like. Their Google Meet code is right here on on Classroom. So they just have to go to their period. So if I'm period 2, I go to my Google Meet link. They just click this on Classroom and it jumps them into our Google Meet. The nice thing is when they're working at home, what I've tried to do is pair them up with a student who is in school that day. So what I've created is this is what that first section is in all of my classes. It says Google Meet links. They'll come up here and they will click on one of these links and it will take them to a pairing or a group of 3 where they can work with a student in school and a student that's at home. So that's how we're going to work every single day. Your child should be logging in every single day and working with us every single day. Lastly, on I keep saying homework hotline, on Google Classroom, at the bottom here, I posted our flex day schedule. So here's our flex day schedule. This is when we have our flex days. And then students are jumping in at those times in addition to the original schedule, which is all the way right down here, regular times. So they know what time they're jumping in. And that stays the same for everyone. So every time, even if you're at home, 8:55 is second period. So I expect to see my 8:55 students, my second period students at that time. If you have any questions, Mrs. Mills is going to go over the next section. Other than that, nice to meet you and have yourself a good day.